silence of 100 guests waiting for the vows to be spoken. Claire stood at the altar in her shimmering gown, her hands trembling slightly in the glow of the chandeliers. The minister lifted his book, ready to pronounce the words every bride dreams of. But just as Claire opened her mouth to say "I do," her mother, Evelyn, rose from the front row and spoke in a clear, steady voice. "Stop." Gasps spread across the hall. All eyes turned toward Evelyn, a woman in her early 60s with silver hair and a face that carried both tenderness and steel. She was not the kind of mother who enjoyed drama, and she had never once in her life raised her voice in public. Yet at that moment she stood tall, clutching a thick envelope in her hand, ready to unravel a truth that would shatter the perfect image of this wedding. Claire stared at her in disbelief. Her daughter's eyes were wide, filled with fear and confusion. What was her mother doing? Why here, in front of everyone? The groom, Ryan, shifted nervously at the altar. His mother, Linda, stiffened like a statue, her lips pressed into a thin, furious line. It might have looked like Evelyn was ruining her daughter's happiness, but in reality she was saving her. Saving her from a man whose charming smile hid debts, lies and plans that could destroy her future. Evelyn knew that what she was about to reveal would change the course of her daughter's life forever. The question was not whether she should speak, but whether Claire would understand why her mother had chosen this exact moment to protect her. Months before that unforgettable wedding day, everything seemed like a dream. Claire would come home glowing, her voice light with excitement as she shared every detail of her upcoming marriage. She would show Evelyn the sketches of her wedding gown, the floral arrangements she had chosen, and even the playlist for the reception. To Claire, it all felt like a fairy tale coming true. Ryan, the groom-to-be, looked perfect on the surface. He was handsome, confident, and seemed deeply invested in Claire's happiness. He often brought expensive gifts, spoke of his business ventures with pride, and made promises of a bright future together. When he was around, he charmed everyone with his smile, including some of Evelyn's closest friends. People whispered that Claire was lucky to have found such a successful man. Then there was Linda, Ryan's mother. From the first meeting, she showered Claire with compliments. She praised her manners, her beauty, and even her choice of wedding colors. To anyone listening, Linda sounded like a supportive future mother-in-law. But Evelyn could not shake the feeling that there was something rehearsed in Linda's kindness, as though every word had been carefully chosen to create an illusion of warmth. Still, Evelyn kept quiet. She knew better than to judge too quickly. After all, weddings were stressful for everyone. Perhaps she was only being overly protective, so she smiled, nodded, and helped Claire with the endless preparations. She sat with her during dress fittings, offered advice on invitations, and listened as Claire spoke about how Ryan made her feel safe and loved. To the outside world, this was the picture of a perfect match, but beneath the sparkle and laughter, Evelyn's instincts whispered that something was not right. As the months passed, small cracks began to show through the flawless surface of Ryan's charm. Evelyn was not one to jump to conclusions, but she had lived long enough to know when something felt off. The first sign came during a dinner at a downtown restaurant. Claire had shared a funny story from work, and everyone laughed except Ryan. Instead, he rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath, "That is hardly professional." Though he quickly covered it with a smile and raised his glass in a toast, Evelyn caught the flash of irritation on his face. It was brief, but it stayed with her. Another time, Evelyn tried to ask Ryan about his business. She wanted to understand more about the man her daughter planned to spend her life with. Yet Ryan's answers were vague, filled with complicated jargon that never really explained anything. "It is just investments and partnerships," he would say, brushing her off as if the details were too complex to bother explaining. Evelyn noticed how quickly he changed the subject whenever finances came up. Linda, too, began to show a side that worried Evelyn. During one of the planning meetings, Claire suggested a menu she liked, something simple and meaningful to her. Linda immediately interrupted. "No, that won't impress the guests. You should trust me on this." Claire's opinion was swept aside without a second thought, and Ryan nodded in agreement with his mother. Evelyn watched her daughter's smile fade, though Claire said nothing in protest. Individually, these moments might have seemed harmless. Many brides deal with pushy in-laws or disagreements during wedding planning, but together they painted a troubling picture. Evelyn began to wonder if her daughter's voice and choices were slowly being silenced, and though she wanted to believe the best, her instincts told her this was only the beginning of something darker. The night that confirmed Evelyn's fears began like any other. She had stopped by Ryan's family estate to drop off a piece of fabric swatch for Claire's dressmaker. Claire was upstairs trying on gowns, and Evelyn quietly made her way through the large, echoing hallway. As she reached the sitting room, voices drifted through the half-open door. It was Ryan and his mother, Linda. At first, Evelyn hesitated. She did not want to intrude on a private conversation. But then she heard Ryan's voice, sharp and impatient. "Once she signs the agreement, everything will be under my control. Her inheritance, her accounts, all of it. Claire is too naive to question anything." Evelyn froze. Her chest tightened as Linda's laughter followed. "Exactly, darling. You just need to keep her sweet until the wedding is done. After that, she will be in no position to resist. And Evelyn, do not worry about her. She is sentimental, not smart enough to see what is happening." Those words hit Evelyn like a slap. Her hands shook as she pressed herself against the wall, praying they would not see her standing there. Every instinct screamed at her to burst in and defend her daughter, but she forced herself to stay silent, to listen, to gather the truth she needed. The conversation went on, Ryan detailing his debts, his failed ventures, and his plan to use Claire as his financial lifeline. Linda encouraged him every step of the way, her tone dripping with satisfaction. To them, Claire was not a bride or a partner, she was simply a means to survive. Evelyn's heart pounded as she slipped out quietly. She could hardly breathe, the weight of what she had heard pressing down on her. That night, as she lay awake, one thought repeated in her mind: "If I tell Claire now, she will be devastated. I need proof, solid proof, before I destroy her world." Evelyn knew she could not rely only on what she had overheard. Ryan and Linda would deny everything, and Claire might even believe them. To protect her daughter, Evelyn needed proof that could not be twisted or explained away. That was when she remembered an old friend, Marcus, a retired private investigator who had once worked closely with her late husband. If anyone could uncover the truth, it was him. Over coffee in a quiet diner, Evelyn explained the situation. Marcus listened without interrupting, his sharp eyes narrowing as she spoke. When she finished, he simply nodded. "Leave it with me. If Ryan is hiding something, I will find it." The following weeks were some of the longest of Evelyn's life. She carried on with wedding preparations, smiling through dress fittings and cake tastings, all while keeping the secret that gnawed at her heart. Claire noticed her mother's quietness, but Evelyn brushed it off, saying she was only tired. Inside, however, she was praying that Marcus would uncover the truth quickly. And he did. A thick file landed in Evelyn's hands one Tuesday morning. Inside were bank statements showing staggering debts, lawsuits filed by former business partners, and even newspaper clippings from another state where Ryan had been accused of fraud but settled before trial. Worst of all, there were contracts showing Linda's involvement in arranging marriages of convenience for financial gain. This was not the first time they had used someone for money. Evelyn's stomach turned as she read each page. It was worse than she imagined. Claire was not just marrying into a strained family dynamic, she was walking straight into a trap. Evelyn knew then that silence was no longer an option. She would have to act, no matter how much it hurt. That evening, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table with the file spread out before her. Every page was another nail in the coffin of Ryan's carefully crafted image. She traced the edge of a photograph with her finger, her mind torn in two directions. Should she tell Claire immediately and risk shattering her heart? Or should she wait, choose the perfect moment, and make sure there was no room for denial? The memories of her own youth came rushing back. Evelyn remembered being 23, standing in front of a man she thought she could trust, her late husband, only to learn years later that he had been unfaithful. She had kept silent then, burying her pain for the sake of appearances. That silence had cost her years of peace. And now, watching Claire step blindly toward the same kind of betrayal, Evelyn felt her chest ache with both fear and determination. One moment she pictured storming into Claire's room, throwing the documents down and begging her to walk away. The next moment, she imagined Claire looking at her with disbelief, accusing her of jealousy or of trying to ruin her happiness. That possibility terrified Evelyn more than anything. Losing her daughter's trust would be unbearable. She poured herself a cup of tea, her hands trembling as she lifted the mug. At last she whispered aloud to the empty room, "I will not stay silent again. Not this time. I will protect her, even if she hates me for it." The words steadied her. They reminded her of what it meant to be a mother, not just to love, but to protect, even when it meant being misunderstood. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, sunlight spilling across the manicured lawns of the estate where the ceremony would take place. Guests began to arrive in their finest clothes, laughter and chatter filling the air as photographers captured every moment. To anyone looking in, it was the perfect scene, a celebration of love and promise. Claire was radiant in her lace gown, her smile wide though her hands shook as she held her bouquet. She moved gracefully through the rooms, greeting relatives, pausing for pictures, her excitement bubbling over. Everyone admired her beauty, but only Evelyn noticed the flicker of nervousness in her daughter's eyes. Evelyn wished she could pull Claire aside, tell her everything, but she knew the time had not yet come. The weight of the envelope in her handbag reminded her of what still needed to be done. Ryan played his part well. He greeted guests with charm, shook hands with confidence, and even knelt down to compliment the flower girls. His polished image drew praise from every corner. Beside him, Linda glided through the crowd, offering air kisses and rehearsed compliments, radiating pride like the matriarch of a perfect family. But Evelyn, watching from the sidelines, saw the rehearsed nature of it all. She saw the way Ryan's smile faded the moment people turned their backs, and the way Linda's eyes darted with calculation. As the music began and guests took their seats, Evelyn walked slowly to the front row. She sat down, her hands folded tightly over her lap, her heart pounding in her chest. Inside her purse, the documents Marcus had gathered lay waiting. She knew that in just a few moments everything would change. The ceremony was beginning and so was her moment of truth. The minister opened his book and began to speak, his voice echoing gently through the hall. Guests leaned forward, ready to witness the vows. Claire's face glowed as she looked at Ryan, her lips trembling with anticipation. Evelyn's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She clutched her purse tightly, her breath shallow. The moment had come. "Do you, Claire, take this man?" "Stop." Evelyn's voice cut through the room, steady and unshakable. Every head turned toward her. The guests gasped, whispers rising in waves. Claire froze, her bouquet slipping slightly in her hand. Evelyn stood, her silver hair catching the light, her presence commanding attention. She stepped into the aisle and pulled the thick envelope from her bag. Her eyes never left Ryan's. "Before my daughter speaks another word, there is something everyone here deserves to know." Ryan's smile faltered. "Evelyn, this is highly inappropriate." She held up the papers. "Is it inappropriate to reveal the truth? These are court documents, debt records, and evidence of fraud tied directly to you. And recordings," she continued, her voice unwavering, "of you and your mother planning to use Claire for her inheritance." The room fell silent. Claire's eyes widened in horror as Evelyn pressed a small recorder, filling the hall with Ryan's own voice. "Once she signs, everything will be under my control." Gasps erupted. Murmurs spread like fire. Guests turned to Ryan, their admiration turning into suspicion. Ryan stammered, his face red. This is taken out of context." But Linda snapped, unable to contain herself. "You should have been more careful, Ryan." Her voice rang out, sharp and furious. The crowd erupted. Claire dropped her bouquet, tears streaking her face as she looked from Ryan to her mother. In that moment she understood everything. Evelyn had not come to ruin her wedding. She had come to save her. The ceremony collapsed into chaos. Guests stood from their chairs, voices rising in shock and disbelief. Some clutched their pearls, others whispered furiously, while a few shook their heads in pity for Claire. The dream wedding unraveled before everyone's eyes, but Evelyn stood firm, her gaze locked on her daughter. Claire turned to Ryan, her voice trembling. "Is this true?" Ryan's lips parted, but no words came. His silence was the only answer she needed. She pulled the ring from her finger and let it fall to the floor with a soft clink that echoed louder than any shout. Gasps filled the room once more as she stepped back from him, her body shaking with both rage and heartbreak. Linda rushed forward, trying to salvage the moment, but several guests had already surrounded Evelyn, asking to see the documents. The evidence was undeniable. Within days, the papers Evelyn revealed were handed to lawyers. Ryan faced multiple lawsuits from his former business partners, and creditors swarmed in to claim what he owed. Linda, once admired for her poise and elegance, became the subject of scandal, her reputation in the community shattered beyond repair. As for Claire, she struggled in the days that followed. Her heart was broken, her trust bruised, but she was free. Free from the trap that had been carefully laid for her. Each night, Evelyn stayed by her side, reminding her gently that strength often comes from surviving the storm. Together, they picked up the pieces of her life step by step. The wedding was gone, but Evelyn knew she had given her daughter something far more valuable than a beautiful ceremony. She had given her the chance to reclaim her future. Weeks later, the shock of the cancelled wedding had begun to fade. Claire no longer wore the heavy look of betrayal on her face. Instead, there was a quiet strength in her eyes, the kind that only comes from surviving something painful and walking away wiser. She and Evelyn often took long walks together in the evenings, the cool air wrapping around them as they spoke openly about the past and the future. One evening, as they sat on a park bench watching the sunset, Claire turned to her mother. "You saved me. I didn't see it, but you did. Thank you for not letting me make the biggest mistake of my life." Evelyn simply squeezed her daughter's hand, her eyes glistening. "That's what mothers do. We carry the burden when our children cannot see it. We protect, even if it means being misunderstood." The story of that day became more than a cancelled wedding. For Evelyn, it was proof that silence is not always golden. Sometimes the greatest act of love is finding the courage to speak when no one else will. And for Claire, it was a reminder that true love is never built on lies, manipulation, or financial gain. It is built on trust, respect, and honesty. To everyone listening now, remember this: appearances can be deceiving, but a mother's intuition is rarely wrong. If you have someone in your life who fights for you, even when it hurts, hold on to them. And if this story resonates with you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and leave a comment about your own experiences.